There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Camera Chronicles. I'm your host, Ranjan Jindal, joined by my co-host, Caleb Dudley. Caleb, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Season's starting to wind down a little bit.
I know. We got our last few games of the regular season. Today, we're going to talk about the upcoming matchup with Illinois at Madison Square Garden, a rare non-conference game in February, so that should be fun to preview. We're also gonna recap two of the Blue Devil wins against Virginia and Stanford. But when we preview Illinois, we're going to be joined by Ben Fader, who's the sports editor over at the Daily Illini, so that'll be super fun. Excited for this episode. But first, this podcast is brought to you by Duke Stores. Support your favorite Duke team. Duke Stores is home to the only collection of merchandise in the world that comes to you straight from Duke University. Go to shop.duke.edu for all of your Duke merch. All right, so let's start off with the game last Saturday. Duke beat Stanford 106-70 in the Blue Devils' highest scoring game this season. It really was an offensive outburst for Duke. You were there covering. So I'll start with you with this. What were some of your takeaways from that game, which was an absolute beatdown of Stanford on the offensive end?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty unbelievable. At like a little bit left in the first half, I was like, I wonder if they'll get 100 today. And they did. They got 106. It was just, I mean, everyone was on. It was really fun to see and fun to watch. I think, we've seen the last couple of games, Duke's been able to, move the ball with success and has looked better on offense, but this game really, I think, put it all together for him. Kamal Malawach was 8 for 9. He had 7 dunks in the game. They just kept finding him down low, and it was just too easy for him. Tyrese Proctor had 23. Sion James had, 6 assists, 14 points. He's 3 for 3 from the field. Our Elliot Jarnett in his sidebar said, he wrote all the stuff about the offense, and then at the end, he's like, I didn't even mention Cooper Flagg yet. Cooper Flagg had 19 as well, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. And so it was really, really impressive on the offensive end. Thought Caleb Foster getting in and getting a good 10 points in 6 minutes was good for his confidence, which could be big down the stretch. And then on the other end of the floor, I thought the job on Maxime Renaud was really good. First half, he kind of got his, which, he's going to get his. He hit 4 threes. We mentioned, he's not going to hit 0 threes or hit a bunch, and he hit a bunch. But I thought the second half, he obviously had a little bit of an injury he was dealing with, but I thought they did a really good job making him take tough shots at the rim. Nothing was easy for him the entire game, and so credit to Malawach and Malik Brown and Cooper Flagg for really making it tough on him all day.
Yeah, I agree. I remember mentioning last week, I was like, if you're going to give up something, at least, give up some threes. And he was 4 for 9. So he did hit some of them, but it really wasn't sustainable for them in the long run. Also on defense, Jalen Blakes, who got a pretty decent ovation. Did he? I wasn't.
Yeah, no, it was cool.
It was cool.
Okay. I know he's probably the guy to everyone that, maybe the least animosity towards. And Coach Kyle Smith after the game was like, I told him before the game, it's going to be, they're going to, love upon you, but it's going to be extra pressure on you. And, didn't go.
Yeah, the extra pressure. I mean, it's definitely so mental. And he was 1 for 10, over 4 from the field. And he's having a fantastic season, but it was good to see him get 1 bucket, at least in Cameron, or you don't want him to go out here with a bagel. So that was a bright spot on defense. One thing I will say offensively is the assist to turnover ratio is what really impressed me. 23 assists, 5 turnovers, best assist to turnover ratio of the season. And just Duke has done a lot better job not turning the ball over since that Wake game where it was just an abundance of turnovers. But, then again, we'll talk about this later, but Malik Brown's injury, we'll see how that factors into it at all. But Duke really moved the ball, shooters all across the board. And when Foster came in, like you mentioned, even he got his, and that was nice to see. But when this team moves the ball, man, it's pretty. Sion and Cooper both had 6 assists, and Sion James has been an assist weapon. Sometimes goes kind of under the radar, but I was really
sure he leads the conference in assist turnover ratio.
Really?
So
there you go.
He's been, everything that Coach Shire and Duke wanted and more out of the portal.
Yeah, for sure. That was a fantastic offensive game from Duke. And then another quick turnaround, a Saturday, Monday, traveled up to Virginia to play a Virginia team that had been playing better of late. Won, I think 3 of their last 4 going into the matchup. But Duke took care of business. It was an 80-62 win. Pretty solid effort. Nothing too crazy there. The one thing of note is that Malik Brown came out of that game in the first half with about a minute left due to a left shoulder dislocation. Shire confirmed it after the game. That it was a dislocation. And then just today, or Thursday, when we were recording this, we got some good news from Shire. that he does expect Malik Brown to be back by the end of the season. He said there was nothing major beyond the dislocation or nothing unusual, but he does still expect Brown to be out for a few weeks. We don't really know what that means. He said a few weeks, similar timeline to the knee injury he had earlier. So I assume it'll be about the same. I'm thinking like, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. Don't want to speculate too much, but probably out for the remainder of the regular season if I was to guess. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. But now let's talk about the game a little bit. What were some of your reactions to that 80-62 win for Duke?
Yeah, I thought it was like you said, it was kind of another run of the mill game. Virginia, I was impressed with Virginia at first. They really kept it close. Virginia has not been very good, like you said, but playing better as of late. It's kind of a shame that no more Tony Bennett, Virginia. Those games against Duke were always
Yeah.
all-time classics. Some of the best teams in the country, but I thought Duke did well to do that and still play well after Malik Brown went out. Isaiah Evans, I thought, played particularly well. He had 5 threes, 17 points. He's really, he's a weapon. And he's probably the best 7th man in the country or whatever. And so, good to see him do that. Cooper Flack had a double-double in the first half, which was just ridiculous. But yeah, I thought, good showing all around.
Yeah, and when Malik Brown came out, one of our writers, Abby DeSalvo, wrote a sidebar, and Patrick Ngongbo came in and absolutely dominated. He had kind of his best performance of the season offensively in terms of scoring, and I don't know. I'm impressed with his hands catching the ball down low and kind of how nimble he is at times.
Yes.
Because you don't really, I don't know. You don't really expect that all the time out of big men, and especially him being a freshman, you wonder how he adjusts. But he kind of is quick on his feet and has good hands. And he can be a lob threat and sometimes a little bit more than that. And Isaiah Evans said after the game, you guys don't know how good he is. Kind of like an indication that he's been playing pretty well in practice and probably will be unleashed a little bit more this season. So that was cool.
Yeah, he gives me like old school big man vibes.
Yeah.
Back to the basket.
Caleb loves a good big man.
Hook game. I love it. And yeah, I think it's definitely cool for him. I know there was questions coming into the season about how much of a role he would play with obviously Malawach and Malik Brown. So it's cool to see him, get his shine here down the stretch.
Yeah. So another solid win from Duke, getting them to 15-1 in conference, 23-3 overall as we approach the last couple of weeks of the ACC regular season. So last week when we talked about the NCAA tournament top 16 reveals before it was released, but that was released on Saturday for the men's and Sunday for the women's. So the tournament committee released each of the 4 number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 seeds. Duke was placed as a number 1 seed in the East region in the men's side and number 3 in the women's. And getting that time where everyone's talking about bracketology. We usually do our stock up, stock down within the ACC, but in honor of this being such a big week for the nation, let's expand it to the country. Why not? Talk about some teams, a stock up, stock down, and then maybe we'll do a broader discussion. But who is your stock up, stock down in the nation here?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're doing this as opposed to ACC. The ACC,
yeah, it's been
it's getting sad.
The real reason is because we couldn't think of ones for the ACC.
Yeah, it's just really But besides that, stock up. I'm gonna go with Maryland. Coming into the season. Derek Queen is like my favorite player in the whole country. Not afraid to say it. We just talked about me loving old school big men. He's that. That was a great CBS Sports feature today. He's the best freshman they've had in the last 30 years. He's unbelievable. They have the best nickname in the country, the Crab 5. But they've won 7 of their last 8. They've been really, really good. They took it to Illinois, who's Duke's upcoming opponent. And it's just the Big Ten's tough, but they've been really good. They're 15th in KenPom at this point. They beat Wisconsin. And so, I think they're really coming into their own. They've got they got a really solid starting 5. And so they're my stock up. And then my stock down is Kansas. You just mentioned the top 16 reveal. Kansas was in it at 15, and since then, they have been really, really struggling. They got their doors blown off at BYU. It was, what did it lose, like 36 or something like that?
It was brutal, yeah.
It was really, really bad. And it's weird to me because I think, they obviously have talent. And I think it's just kind of been they went out and got talent, but the fit isn't really right with the team. I don't know if they tried to build around Dickinson. I don't know if that was the best choice. AJ Store's really been kind of a bust for them as their big fish out of the portal, and so just been a down year for them. Not used to seeing Kansas struggle in conference play, but here they are. They're 8-7 in the Big 12, and so they're my stock down pretty easily.
Yeah, it's interesting with the reliance on the portal. Sometimes it's a miss, and you've seen Kansas just kind of go on a nosedive. And there's been, I don't know, Kansas basketball Twitter's been letting AJ Store hear it. Let's put it that
way.
Yeah,
and they've got
And he's kind of out of the starting lineup.
they've got 5 games left. 2 of them are like the worst 2 teams in the conference, Colorado and Oklahoma State. But then they have Texas Tech, Houston, and Arizona. I mean, they might end with a 500 record in conference play.
Right. They just have not been shooting the ball well. All right. Yeah, those were both very good. Mine, I'm going to start with my stock up, I guess. Let's be positive.
Yeah.
This is a team who's, I don't know if it really counts as a stock up just because their stock is usually always up, but I feel like they've been floating under the radar a bit this year, and that's Houston. Because they had a few non-conference losses early, they lost to Auburn, Alabama, and San Diego State. All those, by the way, were overtime close games, and so I think kind of people put them on a tier list below some of the other top teams in the country, Duke, Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, etc. But going into Big 12 play, they've been absolutely phenomenal, winning a bunch of games in a row, only one loss in Big 12 play. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now, and just got a big win at Arizona and have beaten a lot of teams in different ways. But what is different about this team, in my opinion, is Houston can defend, Houston can rebound, but this Houston team can shoot. And that makes them really scary. LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp, 2 guards that Duke fans know very well, are both shooting above 40%. They're both there last year. Sharp almost hit the 3 to tie the game in the Sweet 16. But those 2 are shooters. And then, across the board, you have Malik Wilson, who's shooting 45% from deep. He's another great 3-point shooting guard. So just a lot of talent on this team that can shoot. And obviously, they're always going to play defense and rebound. So I think, and they're well coached. So this might be a tough out and a sleeper national championship pick.
Yeah, I'm looking at their team. They've got 5 guys that shoot 39% or better from downtown.
Yeah.
And, 4 of the 5 of them are pretty high volume. It's impressive. Much different than the Houston of last year.
For sure. And then my stock down, we were watching this game on Saturday, but UConn, obviously reigning national champions, but big turnover. And UConn had a bit of an up and down season, and especially at the beginning of the season, they had those 3 losses and in a row over at Maui. But then they kind of, figured it out a bit. But they've been losing a bunch of games in conference recently, and the most embarrassing of which was to Seton Hall, who's last place. Last place in the Big East, I think.
Yeah, they're bad.
They're 2-12, and it was a 69-68 game. And it was funny because I was watching it with one of our other writers, Don Panolio, and we turned it off with like a minute left because you're like, oh, this is over, because UConn was up by like 5, I want to say, with like a minute left. And then the ending of that game was just insane. There was like a steal and an inbound and a couple of made threes at the end. And it's interesting because UConn is always such a great offensive team, and they're not a bad offensive team this year too. But just some of the hustle things and things that you would not expect from a 2-time defending national champion to do. Their defense is not great, just to put it kindly, and they just weren't, getting the loose balls. They were kind of careless at the end, a couple turnovers, 2 by Liam McNeely, who's a very talented freshman. I don't want to take that away from him, but, a bit of a younger team in that sense. And so, I don't know. It's been a struggle for UConn. They're going to make the tournament, and they're going to be a tough out in the tournament regardless, because they know how to win and they have a phenomenal coach. But if they keep losing, it's going to really affect their seed and make them have a tough, first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I was going to say, you look at these like 8-9 projected 8-9 seeds.
Yeah.
It's like Baylor, UConn, Gonzaga. These teams are the perennial powerhouses in college basketball, and it's really been kind of a weird year for them. And it'll be it's going to be the bracket picking is going to be quite the time when you see UConn as 8 seed against a 1 seed. Like, oh, back-to-back champs, UConn. So it'll be interesting, and they definitely have enough talent to play with these teams. So teams definitely aren't going to want to see teams like UConn in the second round.
Yeah, definitely not. That's a great point. These 8-9 games are going to be fun. And, Duke in all likelihood is going to have a 1. And in the recent Lenardi bracketology, UConn's the 8 in that region. So a Duke-UConn match and Raleigh, come on now. Second round, that would be exciting. We'll do a full bracketology episode a little bit later when we obviously have the full bracket, and we'll predict it there and talk about our picks. But yeah, it's a great time for college basketball. So check out the top 16 reveal and keep watching stuff. All right, so we still have a game to preview. Duke's going to take on Illinois in Madison Square Garden Saturday at 8 p.m. and we'll talk about that game with Ben Fader of the Daily Illini when we come back. Welcome back to the Cameron Chronicles. We're here with a very special guest, Ben Fader, the sports editor of the Daily Illini, is here to preview the Duke versus Illinois game. Ben, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So let's just start off for people who might not have been paying attention to Illinois season as a whole so far. Can you just kind of give us the rundown of Illinois season this year? Had some ups and downs, but kind of tell us the story of the season to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the real story of Illinois starts last year. They made the Elite Eight when Terrence Shannon, Marcus Damas, Coleman Hawkins, really good trio. And they ran into the brick wall that was UConn, right? A lot of people think they could have gone to the Final Four, but only one guy returns from the roster. So, you're making do with all that. Two coaches leave, so you're replacing those guys. Nobody brand new, but still major differences in the program. And they bring in a ton of talent, more talent than last year, probably. And the first 2 months of the season, Illinois looks probably like a top 10 team. Greatest road win over a top 10 opponent in NCAA history at Oregon. They're mowing people down. They're looking like they're shooting the three ball very well. And then they come back home for a game against Penn State. Kasparis Yakachionis sprains his wrist, and then Tomislav Ivic gets mono, and everything since then has just completely fallen apart. They've been a mediocre to below average team since the beginning of January. Um, they still have a ton of talent, but they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country since then, which is bad because like 55% of their shots are three pointers, something around there. And they just lost Marez Johnson, a really talented freshman, basically their only physicality down low, probably for the season, fractured his wrist, doing what he does best, blocking a shot over the weekend against Michigan State. And they're searching for answers right now, quite honestly. It was a great start, but they have had illness after injury recently, and they're playing bad basketball now.
Yeah, well, it's definitely unfortunate there at the end. I was thinking about how this year it just feels like illness has taken over college basketball more than any other previous year that I've noticed. Um, but you mentioned the Michigan State game there, and I was able to watch the past two games, Michigan State and Wisconsin. Obviously, tough stretch for Illinois against two ranked teams, but you really saw some defensive vulnerabilities there, especially against Wisconsin, and a bit in the second half against Michigan State. What led to the outcome of those games? None of the Michigan State game was close, but not till or in the first half at least. But the Wisconsin game was kind of a convincing win throughout. Talk about those two games and what led Illinois to be on the losing side of both.
When Illinois makes their three pointers, because they take so many of them, they're still a good basketball team. Michigan State, they take an early double-digit lead there because they're knocking down their threes.
Right.
They hit four early, and that kept them in the game for a while. But Izzo admitted himself he was okay with letting Illinois beat them from beyond the three-point line. And that was very evident through their approach. Illinois missed their last like 19 shots or something in that one. They didn't score in the final 6 minutes. I think the game ended on a 14 to -2 run because they reversed a goal.
Right. I do remember that. Yeah.
So I mean that's where that game went wrong. That
Yeah.
was easily a winnable game with open
Yeah.
jumpers needing to be made, and they just were not. They couldn't capitalize on it. Wisconsin, first game without Marez Johnson, Tomislav, and you lose Jake Davis, but Tomislav is also hurt. That one, I thought they stuck around for as long as they could have against a decent Wisconsin team. And mind you, Illinois beat Wisconsin earlier
Right.
this year when they were playing good basketball. I think there's a huge hole in the middle of Illinois' defense now because Ivisic is not a primary like defender. That's not what he does. He's more of an offensive threat. So there were a lot of holes in the paint that Illinois was scrambling to cover. Wisconsin has two 7-footers starting for him, so that really exposed a lot of flaws there. But just relentless attacking everywhere. Other than Kylan Boswell, I mean Johnson was the next best defender on this roster, and so there's a lot of weaknesses. But I would definitely attack the rim on this team right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I saw after the Wisconsin game that like there was no handshake line because they were worried about illness. Is that something that is still going on and coming through Saturday? And then just give us an update about the general injury report. I know you just mentioned some guys, but who's healthy, who's not? How sick are we? Where are we at?
I'll be blunt here. They've been dealing with illness since the beginning of January. and that's just not an excuse anymore. Like, I get it. There's people that are sick, but I mean, Jake Davis hit 2 threes at the beginning of the Wisconsin game, and they were keeping it close. And he runs off the floor and he goes and throws up in the locker room. Never comes back. Like, Ivic had mono, and now he's got flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
They are all over the place. If we're being honest here, there's probably still 4 to 5 guys suffering from symptoms, from what it sounds like. But at some point, if it's this extended, you just gotta suck it up and go through it. It's gone on for too long. Other than that, I don't think there's any real injuries. Um, People think that Casper is still dealing with something with his arm, but that's just speculation. I think overall they should be fine.
Cool. You just mentioned Yakachonis dealing with a little bit of injury. Obviously, he's had a really good year. One of the top draft prospects in the country. What makes him so difficult to guard, and what kind of problems can he present for Duke?
Um, he's still shown flashes. He's definitely struggled a little bit without having a full force of healthy guys around him. But he's a good playmaker. When he gets sped up, he can turn it over a little bit, but he can make some really good passes. He's really good at finding guys. He's best though in those final couple minutes of a close game. I don't think there's a single one of those close games that you look at this year. I mean, you go to Arkansas, Missouri, um, of Washington, and the ball is in his hands every single time, and he's the one making the big shots. It happened against UCLA actually just last week again, where he hit another clutch jumper on the baseline. But like that's what he does best, big shots.
Yeah.
Now he has faltered a little bit more recently in the other parts of the game, but when he's on, he's making tough shots. He does not care if there's a hand in his face. He will be taking that. That's his shot selection, and just trying to find open guys.
Yeah, he's definitely a talented scorer, and I'm impressed watching him the past few weeks. Could you tell us maybe a bit about a player who you think could be an X factor that maybe fans or Duke fans particularly have not watched as much that you think could have a big impact on this game? You obviously aside from the star player or players.
Yeah, I guess this one's pretty easy. Gibbs Lawhorn. He was the only returner from last year. And he's been kind of outcast a little bit at times this year just because of the talent that they've had
Right.
in other areas on the roster. But I mean, he's really good. He's your hustle guy. He stuck around. He, he's maybe a generous 6'1", but he somehow finds his way onto the offensive boards. He can pick it up the court. He's a very good shooter. Despite, it says he's shooting 28% this year, but I feel like that doesn't do it justice. I think last game against Wisconsin, he knocked down multiple 3-pointers, and he would be the X factor here with everybody else starting to lag. Maybe that guy with experience who could step up. He's played teams like Duke before this late in the season.
He's coming off a great game. I was impressed with him against Wisconsin. He made some really tough shots that one. All right, so let's look forward a little bit to this matchup with Duke. Obviously, gonna be a tough one, but what are you looking for from Illinois? What are some of your keys that you think Illinois has to do to keep this game close, or maybe even win one in Madison Square Garden?
I've said it, but making three
Yeah,
pointers. I'd be surprised. I mean, like we just talked about, Michigan State just stacked the paint, didn't let anybody inside, and so they're forced to shoot. Um, just making your 3-pointers. When you look at these guys individually, Yakacionis, Riley, Humrickhouse, these guys should be able to knock down threes. It's
yeah.
what Kylan Boswell and Humrickhouse were both 40% shooters last year at their
Duke
respective
fans know
schools.
Boswell well.
Yeah.
Right, and now they can't
Right.
hit the ocean from a rowboat. Like I I really don't understand it, but if they do that, I think they're in pretty much every game or coming out on top. And then I guess it goes the same on the other side,
Yeah.
you know, holding down the paint on the defensive end, maybe, not allowing everybody except for Khan to shoot, but forcing threes over, easy twos like they were allowing to Wisconsin. So I would say, keep it out at the 3-point line is Illinois' game right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, uh, wh- you mentioned a lack of size in the paint on defense. How do you think they'll match up with Flag and Malawach down there?
He's shaking his head.
It's not going to be good. It's most likely going to be very bad for Illinois. They were always low on big men. Coming into the year when Ivicic was out for a while, it was just Johnson basically. Our other big men redshirted. Um, Kerry Booth, guy you guys probably saw last year at Notre Dame. I I don't know why he doesn't play a little bit more. Not that he's excelled when he's in, but he's a 6'10", lengthy body. I would assume he gets minutes in this one, because he's never really shown anything too poorly. But Johnson was the big guy that would handle a game like this, especially against impressive larger bodies, and he's just missing. So other guys are going to have to step up. I'm thinking, get some guys in foul trouble, try to rough them up a little bit, but it's we're going to look back at this and point to that as why Duke won, probably.
That leads perfectly into my next question. I hate to put you on the spot here, but do you have a score prediction at all?
It, I hate to say it because I do think everybody's being too down on Illinois at this
Mhm.
point, but it's probably going to end up being like 85-62 or something
Wow.
like that. Like S that'll be my prediction,
There you go.
85-62. I just don't think Illinois has what it takes right now. Obviously, if they start knocking down their shots, that decreases the margins by a lot, but
Yeah.
they haven't shown that since January 5th.
Yeah, definitely. Should be an interesting one. But lastly, can you want to just talk about what you guys have going on at the Daily Illini? I know you guys probably have a lot of great preview and coverage stuff, but yeah, shout out anything you have socials as well, so our followers can tune in.
Yeah, sure. We're on Instagram, Twitter, at the Daily Illini. We got sports section coverage as well. But we got a great group over here. Really enjoyed my time. I'm leaving just in a couple weeks now, actually.
Oh,
So
neat.
one last hurrah here for the end of the basketball season.
There you go.
But we got a good group. Got a lot of sports. Put out a lot of stories. Very thankful that we're able to go cover this game at Madison Square Garden. Weird timing actually for
Yeah,
a neutral site game
right.
against an out of conference opponent this late. But no, I love the publication. Appreciate you guys bringing me on.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thank you so much. Well, that was Ben Fader of the Daily Illini. Be sure to check out all of his stuff. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, well, there you have it. Ben was a little bit pessimistic about all his chances, but he gave a lot of great insight about that team and its struggles. He's, I think, right. Really, it's what's going to come down to is 3-point shooting, as so many of these games do. But what are some of your keys to the game for Duke, and do you have a score prediction too?
Yeah, I think Ben pretty much hit it on the head. As pessimistic about the game. I think Illinois is still one of the better teams in the country.
Hmm.
The metrics still love them. They're still a tournament team. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. The lack of size is definitely a concern. We've seen Duke kind of beat up on teams like that.
Yeah.
So I think that'll probably be where it goes. I think Illinois is a little bit better on defense than maybe Ben was letting on. So I'll go 77-66 Duke.
There you go. All right. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see for Duke with Malik Brown being out. How Duke responds, because in some of the games where he was out, namely Wake Forest and NC State, those games were closer against teams that are, I think Illinois is better than both of those teams. So, and they got pretty close. So who's going to step up in his absence? Mason Gillis, and Ngangba, especially because, you can really take advantage of size. So I think Ngangba might get a decent amount of minutes. And he'll have to play well. So that's kind of my key. Can the backups behind Malawach play well, and can Malawach stay out of foul trouble? And if they do that, I think this should be a pretty straightforward win for Duke. Although I do really like some of these Illinois shooters outside of Yakuchonis. I think Will Riley and Boswell, who we mentioned earlier, can both shoot the ball well. So if they catch lightning in a bottle, really anything can happen. I'm gonna go with 81 to like 68, 70 type vibe. I think it might get close at times because when that bench unit comes in for Duke, it might not be as strong as what would normally happen if Malik Brown is inserted. So Illinois could make runs at times, and who knows what happens. In this type of game where non-conference game in the middle of the year, Duke has not had very much game pressure besides the Clemson game, which it obviously lost. So if Illinois can put that on Duke, we'll see. But yeah, should be a fun one.
No, I was gonna say I think Coach Shires was smart to schedule this game. Illinois struggles aside, I think playing a different team from a different conference is definitely an important thing down the stretch, and they're one of the better teams that Duke's gonna play until the tournament. Here they haven't played a team this good since Clemson, and then if you say Illinois is better than Clemson, then December against Auburn, and so it's good for them to schedule this. I know Shire mentioned he wants to do it again next year, something similar, and obviously Duke has a pretty good track record at MSG, so I think the fans are definitely excited, and it'll be a fun, there'll be a lot of scouts there between Yakachonis and Duke's guys, so it'll be a fun one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to go up to MSG. I'll be up there with another one of our writers, Sophie Levinson. Check out all of our coverage of the game at DukeChronicle.com and the Daily Illini. Check out their coverage too. We have preview stuff going up and game coverage as well. We're getting to that home stretch though. Just a couple more weeks of the regular season and then ACC tournament time. So that's going to be super fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this weekend of college basketball. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the snow in Durham. We're having snow here, and I don't know how to act. This is crazy. But yeah, enjoy all that, and we'll see you guys next week. For Caleb Dudley, I'm Ranjan Jindal. This has been the Cameron Chronicles.